What's the latest on the Israel-Hamas war? The IDF announced that it recovered more bodies of hostages from the Gaza Strip as negotiations over a truce and hostage exchange near another stalemate. Substantial escalations reported throughout the West Bank as the IDF has launched a major operation in the northern parts of the region. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, there's intensifying fighting that is reported in the Tufts region of Gaza City, and the UN has announced local pauses in the fighting aimed at facilitating the distribution of polio vaccines throughout the Gaza Strip. I'm Alon Burstein. Let's dive deep into the latest on the Israel-Hamas war. On day 330 of the war, the IDF is continuing to retrieve hostages from the Gaza Strip, although the vast majority of them are bodies of hostages who have been killed. After in the past week, one live Israeli hostage, Farhan al-Qadi, was rescued from Khan Yunis, on August 28th, the IDF reported retrieving the body of an IDF soldier who was killed on October 7th, and his body was kidnapped back to the Gaza Strip. The identity of the IDF soldier was not published, although rumors surfaced suggesting that it was the body of Shaked Dahan. Meanwhile, earlier this evening, the IDF announced that it had retrieved more bodies of hostages from the Gaza Strip. However, as of the time I am recording this, their identity has not yet been published. There are countless rumors surfacing about their identity, however, nothing that I would consider credible at this time. When the identities of those hostages are published, I will try to put out a special video covering this. Meanwhile, on the negotiations front, talks are continuing with lower-level negotiating teams that are going on in Doha and Qatar. However, thus far, no breakthroughs have been reported. As a reminder, the main point of disagreement at this point relates to the IDF presence along the Netzarim corridor, that is the corridor the IDF maintains that divides the Gaza Strip from north to south, and in the Philadelphia line, that is the line along the border between Gaza and Egypt. The freedom of movement of Palestinians to return to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, the formula of how many Palestinian prisoners will be released versus Israeli hostages, and whether or not Israel will have veto power in this matter, and the question about whether the ceasefire will automatically be extended beyond the first 6 weeks of the initial hostage deal, or whether fighting can be resumed. In the past several days, there was intensive political turmoil in Israel surrounding the deal after the Israeli cabinet voted on Thursday to declare that in any hostage deal, the IDF will maintain its presence along the Philadelphia line. The decision itself, it's important to note, does not actually change Israel's stance in the negotiations. Israel has said that it is refusing to withdraw from the Philadelphia line. However, the cabinet voting on this does lock the government into that decision. So, in other words, if at any time in the negotiations Israel would like to withdraw from that position and possibly allow a redeployment or an absolute withdrawal of the IDF from the Philadelphia line, at this point, that is not possible for the negotiating team. The Israeli cabinet will have to be reconvened in order to approve that. Right now, Israel has sort of voted into law that the IDF is not allowed to agree to withdraw from the Philadelphia line. According to many leaks from the cabinet meeting in Israel, the entire security establishment in the country, including the Mossad, the Shabak, and the IDF, all criticized this vote, stating that they are all in favor of a hostage deal, even if it would mean a temporary IDF withdrawal from the Philadelphia line, or even from different areas of the Gaza Strip, and that this vote will only sabotage the ongoing negotiations. The head of the Israeli Mossad, Dedi Barnea, reportedly stated in that cabinet meeting that the vote in cabinet is meaningless since negotiations right now are centering around the formula of exchange of Israeli hostage for Palestinian prisoners, and as such, the vote right now is going to do nothing except cause a backlash. Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant, who was the only one in cabinet who voted against this declaration, stated that Israel has an obligation to return the hostages even at a price of withdrawing from the Philadelphia line. Reportedly, when he was challenged that this should be the decision of Prime Minister Netanyahu, he replied, and I quote, "Netanyahu can decide anything he wants. He can also decide to kill all of the hostages." Responding to this, Egypt put out official statement stating that the country rejects the notion of IDF presence along the Philadelphia line or any IDF presence in the Rafah crossing. A day later, Hamas sources were also quoted in different Saudi news sites stating that the ongoing negotiations in Qatar are achieving no results and that Israel has proved its intent to keep outposts along the Philadelphia line within and outposts within the Rafah region. Right now, they stated those negotiations are ongoing, although there's no major summit meeting that is scheduled. There's instead these lower-level negotiations, hoping for a breakthrough. Remains to be seen if such a thing happens. However, with this vote in cabinet, different sources, both within Hamas and within the Israeli negotiating teams, predicted that the situation is heading very quickly towards a stalemate. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, fighting has continued in the past several days, with escalations being reported in the northern parts of the Strip. According to Palestinian reports on the ground, the IDF has carried out intensive bombing campaigns in the Tufts region of the eastern parts of Gaza City. This is the northern part of the Gaza Strip. And both the IDF and the Al-Qassam brigades reported intensive fighting throughout different regions of the north. In southern Gaza, the IDF announced on August 29th that after nearly 3 months of intensive fighting, Hamas's Rafah battalion has been dismantled and has ceased to operate effectively. Now, it's important to understand that when the IDF says that a Hamas battalion is dismantled, like it said happened in Khan Yunis, like it said happened in Gaza City, that does not mean that the fighting in the area ends, but rather what the IDF is stating that the Hamas units in the area are no longer operating as a coordinated attack force, and instead fighting has become more sporadic. Despite this announcement, intensive fighting was reported in a different region of Rafah in the last several days, including in the last several hours, specifically in the areas of Tel Sultan. This was reported by both the IDF and the Al-Qassam brigades. Regarding the ongoing fighting in Khan Yunis, on Friday, August 30th, the IDF reported that it was pulling its forces out of the Khan Yunis region nearly a month after another operation was launched in the area. During the past month, there was very intensive fighting that was reported in the several different regions of Khan Yunis, but specifically in the Abbasan regions in the eastern parts of Khan Yunis, as well as the Amal neighborhood in the western parts. During this time and during this ongoing fighting, the IDF also retrieved the bodies of 6 Israeli hostages, and the IDF reported today that it also destroyed 6 tunnels that were at least 6 kilometers long. Regarding the central parts of the Gaza Strip, on Saturday, August 31st, it was reported that Muhammad Katrawi, who is the commander of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who is in charge of all the central camps in the Gaza Strip, was assassinated in an airstrike. Katrawi is a central figure in Palestinian Islamic Jihad activity within central parts of the Gaza Strip, serving in addition to other roles as a deputy division commander of the entire region. More broadly, with regards to the central parts of the Gaza Strip, there are somewhat conflicting reports in the last several days about fighting going on in Deir el-Balah. This is the largest city in the central parts of the Gaza Strip. While increasing raids of the IDF are being reported in the outskirts of the city, other reports suggested that the IDF troops were also evacuating the region at the same time. I'll report more about this when it becomes clearer, although it's also important to remember that Deir el-Balah is the last major city in the Gaza Strip where the IDF has not operated ground forces, so it is somewhat likely this is going to happen in the future. The IDF has been issuing evacuation orders to Palestinians in different neighborhoods in the areas surrounding Deir el-Balah. However, there have also been reports in the last month that the reason the IDF has not operated in that region is because the IDF believes that is where most of the hostages have actually been held. Obviously, we'll learn more about this, and I'll report about this as more information comes out. In other news related to the Gaza Strip, on August 29th, the United Nations announced that Israel has agreed to define safe zones for a 3-day humanitarian pause in the Gaza Strip, during which time a major polio vaccination campaign will take place. The move faced heavy criticism within Israel's right-wing elements, and the Israeli Prime Minister's office put out a clarifying statement, actually several clarifying statements, stating that this will not be a 3-day ceasefire, but rather that only humanitarian corridors will be designated for transporting vaccines, that the pauses in the fighting in the designated areas will not be more than several hours. Either way, it does appear that the humanitarian pauses that have been agreed upon, at least with regards to specific regions, will take place, and the operation to vaccinate the Gazan population that can reach those humanitarian safe zones is scheduled to commence tomorrow. Remains to be seen if that does in fact happen, and if the safe zones are indeed left out of the fighting areas. Was not reported in the major reports where those safe zones are. Likely, we will see them in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip and Gaza City, as well as in Deir el-Balah and in the Mawasi region in the south. However, at this point, that's speculation on my part. Regarding casualties in the Gaza Strip, the IDF is reporting that since the invasion began at the end of October, 339 IDF soldiers have been killed in the Gaza Strip, and 2,263 IDF soldiers have been injured in the Gaza Strip, again, since the invasion began. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that 40,691 Palestinians have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began on October 7th, and that 94,060 Palestinians have been injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. Remind everyone the Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip does not distinguish between civilians and militants. That number includes both militants died in combat as well as Palestinian civilians who have been killed in the war. Meanwhile, a region that I have not reported about a lot recently is the West Bank. However, in the past week, there's been an unusual amount of escalation throughout the region. On August 28th, the IDF launched a major operation in the northern parts of the West Bank, centering around the areas of Jenin refugee camp, Nur Shams refugee camp near Tulkarem, as well as Tufts. In addition, there's also major IDF activity that was reported in the Farah refugee camp in the Jordan Valley. The operation reportedly involved airstrikes in major armored divisions and engineering units of the IDF entering the different towns and villages, and rumors have surfaced that the IDF was carrying out this operation in response to intelligence indicating major terror activity that was being planned in the area, possibly associated with the attempted attack that occurred in Tel Aviv last week, but again, at that point, those are rumors and speculation. During this operation, the IDF reported that Wassam Hazem, who is the head of Hamas activity in Jenin, as well as Muhammad Jaber, who is the head of the local militant outfit in Nur Shams refugee camp, have been killed, and that Bira Kassas, who is one of the commanders of the Tulkarem battalions in the Nur Shams refugee camp, was arrested. Following that report, several Palestinian news sites reported that Palestinian militants in the Nablus region have turned themselves in to the Palestinian Authority security officials out of fear that they are going to be arrested by the IDF, because the IDF is now continuously expanding this operation. No deadline has been placed on how far it is going to expand. Palestinian sources have reported that thus far in this operation, a total of 22 Palestinians have been killed. The IDF reported that 14 militants have been killed throughout this operation, so possibly that is 14 out of 22. Among those who were reported killed is an 83-year-old Palestinian civilian in Jenin. The IDF responded to reports that he was killed in the crossfire, saying they are investigating the incident and that the military regrets any civilian casualties. In addition to this, on Friday, August 30th, there were several Palestinian attacks that occurred throughout the West Bank, including an attack that involved detonating a car bomb at a gas station near the Gush Etzion juncture, and this was followed by an attempted infiltration of Palestinian attackers to the Karmei Tzur settlement. Hours later, it was reported that the IDF has imposed a siege on the town of Hebron, and that it is carrying out major operations within that area in order to try to arrest any collaborators with those attackers. At this point, as far as known, that siege is still being deployed. In addition, there have been ongoing confrontations between Israeli settlers and Palestinians throughout the West Bank in the last week. And the largest event that occurred near the Kusra village, reports indicated that Israeli settlers approached the village and began attacking Palestinians with stones, which quickly turned into an escalation on both sides. 4 Palestinians were reported shot in that confrontation, including a 12-year-old boy. Palestinian sources stated that 3 of those who were shot by IDF fire, and 1 was shot by Israeli settler fire. Again, some of the major headlines from the past week are that the IDF is continuing to retrieve the bodies of hostages from the Gaza Strip, ongoing fighting that is going on in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, as well as in the central parts, possibly dying down in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. Remains to be seen how that develops. The stalemates in negotiations continue, and that operation in the West Bank remains to be seen how far that actually escalates and does it go into other cities in the West Bank as well. If you find these summaries informative, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. Feel free to send them to anyone who you think may be interested in the war. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I'm Alon Burstein. I'm a visiting assistant professor and an Israel Institute fellow in the Department of Political Science at Tufts University. Thanks for watching.